10-й, я 11-й. Поповичу подходит уже подмога, десантники и мотострелковая рота. Как меня понял, прием. Сейчас вокруг тебя заградогонь ставят. Всех людей спрячь в укрытие, прием. Надо, у нас тут пиздец хуярит, все валится. Блокировали со всех сторон.
We're in Grozny, Chechnya, December 31st, 1994. It's the dead of winter, and the city is on fire. A artillery barrage has set the oil tanks alight in the early morning. And black smoke is rolling across the rooftops. Russian tanks are pushing into the streets from 4 directions. Inside them, thousands of young conscripts are riding towards a battle their commander swore would never come. And up in the apartment blocks above them, Chechen fighters are watching the columns roll in, holding their fire. The soldiers think this will be easy. They've been told the enemy is untrained and disorganized, that the sight of armor in the streets will be enough to make them give up. They are about to find out how wrong that is. This is the story of the First Chechen War. By 1991, the Soviet Union is falling apart. And in Chechnya, a former Soviet Air Force general named Dzhokhar Dudayev steps into the gap. That September, his supporters storm the local communist headquarters and throw the party boss out of a window to his death. Dudayev becomes president, and he wants one thing: full independence. Across the new Russia, dozens of ethnic regions are working out their place in the federation. Tatarstan cuts a deal for special autonomy and stays. Chechnya is the only one of 88 territories that refuses to sign anything, and Dudayev won't bend. For 3 years, Boris Yeltsin tries to bring Dudayev down without a war, working through Chechen proxies. In November 1994, Moscow tries it one last time. It arms Dudayev's local rivals, stiffens them with regular Russian soldiers and tanks, and sends them into Grozny. It's the same trick Russia will use in eastern Ukraine 20 years later. It fails badly. Pro-Dudayev fighters knock out 20 of the column's 42 tanks, kill around 150 of the attackers, and parade captured Russian soldiers in front of the cameras. Now everyone can see Moscow's hand in it. Yeltsin has a choice to make, and he chooses force. If you are enjoying the video so far, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. This is the first of 3 videos on Russia's wars. If it's live, you can check out the next part here. If you want to support me more, you can subscribe to my Patreon or channel membership. Plug over. Now let's get back to the video. December 11th, 1994. Russian troops cross into Chechnya to crush what Moscow calls its illegal armed formations. The man running the operation is Defense Minister Pavel Grashev. He has bragged that he can take Grozny with a single airborne regiment in 2 hours. It's a strange promise given the army he actually has. Russia's military in 1994 is a shadow of the Soviet force it used to be. Units are far below strength. Many of the men are frightened, half-trained conscripts who don't understand why they've been sent to fight other citizens of their own country. When the bombing of Chechnya begins on December 1st, several senior officers resign rather than take part, and hundreds of soldiers refuse to deploy. There are early wins. Russian jets catch Dudayev's small air force on the ground and wipe it out. Paratroopers seize the airfield of Kankala, just outside the city, and beat back a counter-attack. It all seems to confirm the promise: the Chechens will fold. But almost none of these soldiers have been trained to fight inside a city. Soviet doctrine treats cities as traps to go around, not into, and they're about to go straight in. Which brings us back to the burning city. The columns roll into a place of nearly 500,000 people. Waiting for them are roughly 2,000 Chechen fighters. On paper, it's no contest. The plan is simple. Drive to the center, take Dudayev's presidential palace, and declare victory by nightfall. Soviet doctrine for storming a city calls for a 4-to-1 advantage, careful reconnaissance, the place sealed off, and proper maps. The Russians have none of it. Around 6,000 troops go in almost blind. The few maps they carry are the wrong scale, useless in tight streets. Units get lost. The Chechens have taken down the street signs and moved them around. Nobody has sealed the southern edge of the city, so Chechen reinforcements come and go as they please. And the radios keep dropping out. The columns reach the heart of Grozny around midday. They park in neat lines along the side streets and they wait. The defenders are not what the Russians were promised. Most are Soviet-trained veterans who know exactly how a Russian column thinks and moves. They fight in small groups of 15 to 40 men, each split into teams with an anti-tank gunner, a machine gunner, and a sniper. They've set up at street level, in the windows above and down in the basements, covering every road into the center. And they are well armed. When the Soviet army pulled out of Chechnya, Dudayev's men grabbed something like 80% of the weapons it left behind, tens of thousands of guns, along with anti-tank launchers and grenades by the crate. So they wait, hour after hour, nothing happens. The silence is the point. One Russian conscript, captured later, remembers it simply. There wasn't anything happening at all, no kind of movement. Then a Chechen commander comes onto the Russians' own radio frequency. "Why did you come?" he asks. "Get your things and leave. This is our land." The colonel commanding the leading brigade answers that he's only following orders. The Chechens' reply is a warning. "Pity the mothers and the men. Let's spare each other. This is war. We have weapons and what's more, serious small arms and heavy artillery. We have well-organized fighters." The ambush began 20 minutes later. On the order to fire, the Chechens take out the first and last vehicle in each column at the same moment. Everything trapped between has nowhere to go. The Russian armor turns into a row of steel coffins. The tank guns can't lift high enough to hit the fighters in the upper floors, or drop low enough to reach the ones in the cellars. Terrified crews refuse to leave their vehicles, and the Chechens pick them apart one at a time. The 81st Motor Rifle Regiment pushes deep toward the palace before its radios are jammed. Its commanders drive in circles around the city square, trying to organize a defense while rockets come in from every direction. When they finally reach the palace, the fire pours down from the rooftops and up from the basements. By that afternoon, the regiment is finished. Crews abandon working tanks and run. The 131st Brigade from Maikop has driven straight to the central railway station and dug in. Now it's surrounded. On January 2nd, the brigade's commander tries to get 40 wounded men out in an armored carrier. It goes the wrong way, turns, and is ambushed. 13 men survive. The colonel dies beside the wreck. By the next day, his brigade has lost 789 men, killed, captured, or missing. Out of more than 1,000, only 160 make it out. The generals change their approach. If they can't take the city by driving through it, they'll flatten it. The artillery comes back, and this time it doesn't stop. At its worst, the shelling reportedly reaches tens of thousands of rounds a day, the heaviest bombardment Europe has seen since the Second World War. A British journalist who reaches Grozny that January says that most of the city is simply gone. Whole blocks erased. People crawling out of basements where they've been hiding for weeks. Slowly, the Russians learn. They weld cages of wire mesh onto their tanks to stop the rockets. They bring anti-aircraft guns forward to reach the upper floors. Engineers blow holes through walls instead of walking through booby-trapped doors. By February 1995, most of Grozny is theirs. It's a victory, but it changes nothing. Taking the cities turns out to be the easy part. As Russian forces push into the lowlands and then up into the mountains, the Chechens stop trying to hold ground and switch to guerrilla war. They hit a column, vanish into the hills, and leave the federal troops holding rubble. And the war starts coming home. In April 1995, Russian forces take the village of Samashki and kill at least 100 civilians in what survivors describe as a rampage through their homes. Stories like that don't stay buried. This is the first Russian war that television covers freely, and people at home are watching their sons come back in coffins from a war few of them ever wanted. The fighting drags into 1996, and Moscow wants the man at the center of it. In April, Russian forces lock onto the signal from Dudayev's satellite phone and kill him with a guided missile. The father of Chechen independence is dead. The movement is not. By that summer, Yeltsin is fighting for re-election, and the war hangs around his neck like a stone. In August, Chechen forces under Maskadov and Basayev do something that should be impossible. With around 1,500 men, they retake Grozny from a Russian garrison many times their size. This is the breaking point for Moscow. On August 31st, 1996, the two sides signed the Khasavyurt Accords. Russian forces pull out, and the question of Chechnya's status is pushed 5 years down the road to 2001. On paper, it settles nothing. In practice, Chechnya is independent. The war had been brutal. By Russia's own official count, around 5,500 of its soldiers were killed or went missing, and nearly 18,000 were wounded. Independent estimates of the Russian dead run as high as 14,000. Tens of thousands of Chechen civilians and fighters died as well, by some counts as many as 100,000, along with as many as 35,000 ethnic Russians caught in the fighting. And it was only the beginning. Nearly 30 years later, Russian armored columns rolled towards another capital, Kiev, expecting another quick victory. They drove into the same kind of ambush, on the same kind of streets, and burned the same way. Chechnya's independence would last about 3 years before Russia came back to finish the job. But that's a story for the next video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. As I said, this is the first of 3 videos about Russia's wars. If it's live, you can check out the next part about the Second Chechen War by clicking here. You can also support me more on Patreon or with a channel membership. With that said, I will see you in the next video.